In this video, we're going to look at the calculated number question type. So I've created a new question. I've just called it sample calculated question for the purposes of this tutorial. We're going to go to the question type and select calculated number. So the calculated number question type is a lot like the number question type, but the student can enter computation as its input, and so long as their computation evaluates to whatever the correct number is, they get credit for it. So this is a nice question type if you want to allow students to enter computations and not have to use their calculator first, and so on. So I'm going to create a question. In my question text, I will write some text. Maybe we'll say variable A is how many times as large as B. So we'll say A is how many times as large as B, and then we'll define A and B within our common control. So we'll go ahead and create some variables. We'll do $A equals, for A we'll just do a random number between 31 and 39. For B we'll just do a random integer between 11 and 19. And then A is how many times as large as B. The answer to that question is A divided by B. So if we go ahead and save that and we check out the live preview, we get 31 is how many times as large as 11. So the answer to that is 31 divided by 11. So if we type that in, notice that the student gets a live preview of 31 divided by 11, and then it gives them the decimal approximation for that. And if we submit that, we get correct feedback for it. So I've got a handful of options here to control some of these things. Notice that there's a show answer link, and this will show up for students after the assignment has closed if the instructor has set the option for students to see the answers afterwards. Right now, we get the decimal value for the answer, and that's because in our common control, the answer is defined as an actual decimal value. So this just evaluates to whatever A divided by B is, and so that's what the student sees. However, if we wrap that A divided by B in double quotes, and we turn that into a string that just has like the computation in a string, and then we quick save and preview, now the show answer is going to show as the actual computation instead of the decimal value. And it's still going to accept the correct answer as the answer, but the show answer is going to be the computation. So it's up to you what you want to use here. It's actually kind of nice to use this quote option from time to time if it's important that the student sees the computation needed to get the answer. Now you can also manually override what the student sees for the answer by defining a variable called show answer. So if you do show answer equals, and then I'm just going to type some gibberish in here, and then we'll save it. Now in the show answer, like when you press that button, it's going to show whatever you put in for that variable. So this would be something like actually useful. So maybe you do A divided by B equals, and then we'll just glue on the value A divided by B, and we'll close our backtick. So now when we go to the show answer, we get a nicer looking show answer. So there's a way to control what is shown as the answer there. Okay, so another thing we might want to do is over here in the student preview, maybe we want this answer box, and then behind it we want it to say like times as large as, and then have the preview after that. So if we did answer box, and we indicated where we wanted the answer box to be within the question text, and then we did times as large as, and we save this in preview, we're going to see that we get this times as large as is sitting after the preview. And that's because the answer box and the preview are kind of glued together unless you tell it otherwise. If you want to indicate where the preview goes, you insert a variable called a preview loc. Preview location, you just shorten to preview loc. So now if we quick save and preview, now we get the times as large as sitting behind the answer box, and then the actual preview sits after that. So this is a nice thing to do, especially if you want to add something like units. So you want the student to enter a number of feet, you could put feet behind the answer box, and so on. If you don't want any preview at all, you can actually go to the common control, and there's a variable called hide preview. And if you do hide preview equal to true, you set that to true, it's going to hide the preview. So if we save and preview, now we have no preview. So as you start to type as a student, you don't see any live preview. However, you can still enter the computations and get credit for it that way. So 32 over 13 is still going to work, but the student doesn't get a preview for their answer. One other useful option is a variable called Rel Tolerance. This is relative tolerance. By default, iMath grades to 0.1% relative tolerance. So if you want to increase the tolerance on a question, you could do something like, if you wanted to double the default tolerance, you would do 0.002 for 0.2% relative tolerance. Or if you wanted to increase it and make it 5 times as large, you would do 0.005 and so on. And then there's also a similar option for absolute tolerance. You can find that in the documentation where you can set an absolute tolerance instead of a relative one.